Morning. So he's in the splash zone if you've ever been to SeaWorld, just so you know. Thanks for letting me play today. I think when Jerry and I came up with the word vision, both of us forgot I've had 2 retina surgeries. So I don't know how appropriate that is, but I will do my best to align with the vision. Regarding the samples on your tables, you can take them home, re-gift them, sell them on eBay. What's not going to happen is I'm not going to take them back. So post 9/11 bioterrorism, lot tracking legislation makes it impossible to get them back in the accounting system. So just not going to happen. And we're very fortunate at our company. We know this. We make something that's very inexpensive and everybody's a potential consumer. So if you left every jar here, it would hurt my feelings a little bit, but it wouldn't be a problem. The cleaning staff would take them home, love them, go to Walmart the next week, buy them, tell them they saw the little bald guy talking. It's just, we're very, very fortunate. My buddy, Will Churchill, Frank Kent Cadillac, has never given out a sample as far as I know. No free Cadillacs. So I call this sub-talk Selling as David and Royal Goliath, because this is how I feel going into work. We're a small family business fighting multi-billion-dollar corporations, and I am the little dude in red shorts. Most days, they don't often give me a laser pointer after the Orlando incident, but I've got one, but Jerry pointed it won't work on the screen, which is probably good for all of us. And the beast who will not be named, of course. So we were founded in 1940 in the garage. You see these commercials on TV, but it's like we really were. My granddad distributed items in the 30s. If you were on your way here coming up North Main, on your right, you would have seen the Vintage building, VINNEDG. We have a photo of my granddad in the Vintage company truck he drove in the 30s right outside my office. Keeps you grounded. Dirt roads, he's in a coat and tie, Jack had to be hot as hell. And there's a shadow of the person taking the picture. We're pretty sure it's my grandmother because we could not afford a corporate photographer at the time. But that's where he parked. And when I come here at Joe T's for lunch or dinner, I'm passing where my granddad parked every 80-something years ago. And he was like, what was fun? We made it through the Depression. Let's quit our job and start a business out of the house. And so he and my grandmother did that. And it's funny, we go to trade shows in New York, San Francisco, Vegas, and we have all these salsas out, and people say, are these your grandmother's recipes? And I always say, no, but wouldn't that be cool? It's like, nobody ate Chipotle in 1940, 50, 60, 70, 80. It's very evolutionary. I say organic, and I don't mean it's organic product, that's USDA certification, but organic development of we always did whatever they could figure out how to do. They only sold things out of the house and distributed for 12 years, and they moved into a little brick building on the corner of what's now our 2-city block complex on the edge of the ghetto. And they started making syrup, and then they started making relish. When I was a kid, we just made a southern relish called Chow Chow, which has the velocity of a snail, and we had no money ever. And then, thank God, my dad found a taco sauce company that was having trouble in the 70s, and they started taking over that business, which everything you can see today that we do, craft beer, salsa, tequilas, it all came out of us making private label taco sauce in little 8-ounce jars. Life is so strange. By the way, this is one of the talks I call Stuff You'll Never See on Facebook or our website. So, Jerry may put it there, but I don't like a lot of pithy sayings, but I'll give you 2 or 3 today. The only constant is change. I've found, I'm getting older, and I always used to fantasize about working really hard for a long time, getting to a point where you can just go be like, okay, now I can stop and rest and enjoy. Unfortunately, you can't. The market never stops changing. We make things, my 87-year-old dad, who we pay not to come to work, it's a good gig, but you have to work half a century first. There's things we make, not only has he not tasted, he can't process. Have you seen the dairy-free quesos? We make one of those. It's probably at Whole Foods for $12 on a label that says nothing about us. We do all kinds of, we have a line of Indian sauces. We do all sorts of things, and it's always been that way. When we did syrup, when we did relishes, anybody old enough to know Knott's Berry Farm back in the day, or Stuckey's roadside stands, which are now adult video truckers places. But actually the granddaughter has revived, a 3rd gen Stuckey's has revived it, and they're starting to do that again. The Stuckey's and Knott's Berry Farm private label Chow Chow and tomato relish and corn relish were made by Renfro Foods, and near what we can call near South Side now. And then you get to the current status. I did a talk for 100 financial people last week who got credit for listening to me, which is really scary. But I call that one How a Finance Weenie Got Paid to Play with Food. As I worked every summer since 6th grade doing the nastiest jobs in the factory, and I was illegal, obviously, till I was 16, so I couldn't complain about the pay. And in college, I lived at home, and I had 8 o'clocks in Denton at UNT, which you didn't need a helicopter back then to get to UNT at that time. drove 50 miles back to the factory, spiced from like 2 to 7. I had the world's most interesting smelling Subaru. So I had like garlic here, a little cumin back there. I used to have hair. There would be some paprika up there. And then I would go home and do homework, lived at home, do homework, repeat. And as glamorous as that sounds, I got out of school early. At 21 years old, I found myself working for Ross Perot's company in Dallas, wearing a coat and tie every day. My car did not smell like spices. Working with really smart people, really fun. Great money, great experience, and corporate life will suck the soul right out of your body. So I got an MBA, a CMA, probably another acronym or two, and really good training. But after about 7 years, I was a cog in the machine. We got bought by General Motors. So now I'm working for, at the time, the biggest company in the nation, a little kid from Haltom City. It's like, it was cool, but also not, unfortunately, I was really good at corporate politics, which I don't want to be good at, and you're not paid to actually do anything useful. So I came back 32 years ago. My dad and my uncle needed to take it to the next level or sell out, but they were kind of tired because they'd worked crazy hard, but they weren't big enough to sell out, luckily for me. So I joined my two cousins, and we've been having a lot of fun since then. I wish it were as much fun in the last 32 years as it is to tell you in like 41 seconds. But there's over 900 brands of salsa tracked in the nation. Most of them obviously have a day job. We're number 8 today, I think, but if we doubled, we'd be number 8. So let that process, the big people are big. We make the equivalent. I'll tell you in a moment. We do food service, like gallon jugs, 5-gallon pails for restaurant chains and things, as well as our jars. But if you converted it all to jars, on a day when we're running, we do about 100,000 jars. They're running the machine at 190 jars a minute. Do not put your finger in there. Which is cool, because my dad literally helped fill jars with a spoon, when they were kids. And when I was a kid, I think they were all 28 jars a minute, which they thought was a lightning fast. We're in all U.S., all Canadian provinces. We have a distributor in Australia and Spain, Germany. Don't get excited. I tell people international sales is way sexier than it is profitable. But it does let, cousin Becky and I've gotten, and even James, we've done stuff in London and different places. And we sell 25,000 jars a year in Australia. That's a lot more than zero. It doesn't move the chain, but we're also right in the final stages of making private label salsa for the largest grocery chain in Australia. So if you're, what's it, even a blind squirrel finds a nut, just keep doing the things for the right reason every day and some cool stuff happens. So we are small, and sometimes, by the way, I have fat thumbs and go past it. If at any point I'm just staring, trying to figure out what to say next, talk amongst yourselves, I always come back. So Jerry has my car keys. I can't go anywhere. I'll do anything to increase sales. And there's 2 statements I like to make that sound contradictory, but I don't think they are. First, especially if your name's on the brand, if you have a brand, you can't have an ego, because you're going to be told constantly that you're stupid, your product, it's awful, it's ugly, nobody wants it constantly, and you have to be a massive narcissist. So here's some examples. That is me in a Canadian Mountie costume. If you're familiar with the Halloween store off University, I rented that sucker and flew it to Canada, wore it for 2 days. It's a wool we don't have in the US, horribly hot. I had sweat rolling down my back. There's 42 individual gold buttons you can't see behind the apron I had to do. I thought it was a Velcro strip, it was not. That's a one-size-fits-all hat that left a crease in my head for 2 days. But everyone who came in the show, they're like, you gotta check out the moron from Texas dressed like a Mountie. Because it's all about the product. I'm stuffing the product in your face. Nobody cares about the little short, bald guy with glasses. I don't care either. I just want you to buy more of the brand and the salsa. We made our biggest sale ever in Canada to a retailer at that show. I got Vendor of the Year, so I got to have a little trophy. And again, it's about the salsa. I did find out later it's a felony to dress as a Mountie in Canada. And I never did it again. And I spent the whole show looking behind me. But we were selling 10,000 jars a year to Canada when I came back. We're about 500,000 now. They have 1/10 of our population, so that'd be like 5 million in the U.S. So we've been happy with that. Now the next slide, people get confused. I'm on the right. I don't like hokey stuff, but we found with Miss Texas back in the day, a buyer looked about like me, kind of a moderately ugly guy, middle-aged, but and wouldn't be nice to me, is my point. And I could be like, hey, would you like Miss Texas here to sign a picture for your granddaughter, your whatever, and suddenly they got all warm and squishy. Then I could even use the photos for blackmail. You got to be creative when you have a small company. But another comment here about not prejudging, and it gets harder the older you get, but don't prejudge. Miss Texas came to us and said, Chevrolet is dropping the photo sponsorship. Would Renfro's take it? And my gut response was, you're out of your mind. Renfro Foods is this big, Chevrolet. But instead, I asked about the cost. It was incrementally about $700 more than we were already paying to have her at a trade show. We almost missed that opportunity because if I'd prejudged. For the next 7 years, back pre-COVID, back in the day when it mattered, Miss Texas did 300 public events a year, handing out photos to future little salsa buyers. And every photo for 7 years had our logo and a picture of 4 of our jars. I mean, fantastic opportunity we almost missed. And again, when I started going to Canada to do demos, they said, be sure and bring your cowboy hat and your cowboy boots, because they think we all ride horses to work. I literally bought what you're about to see in order to go to Canada and be a Texan. My wife's like, we didn't have any money. We had 3 kids. She quit working, and you're like, you're going to spend how much on what? I got the little hard shell hat so they don't crush your cowboy hat in the American Airlines overhead bin. I did buy ostrich boots and tell them the cow had chicken pox just to mess with them. But so we're not big enough to do guerrilla marketing. We do what I call orangutan marketing, which includes every TV show and movie set. They can pay the actor $1 million, but they can't buy their own groceries for some reason. So they call people like us. And I know 99% of the time, 99.9% of the time, I'm just feeding the crew. That's the best that's going to happen. And I don't care, because as we said earlier, cool, the crew is actually my people. You know, everybody that's going to buy stuff for the rest of their natural lives from us, that's cool. But occasionally you get lucky, about once a decade for us. And somebody called from Austin, Texas. Nobody had heard of this director. Obviously, they hired a teenager to do what they call product placement. They said, just set decorator, said just put stuff out there. So this person clearly loved Mrs. Renfro's, because I'm going to show you a photo from them. And it was on a screen this big at the movies. It's harder to see here. But there's jars in the cabinet, and they're all no label or fake label except Mrs. Renfro's. Unfortunately, of course, right before we had done a brand change. But anyway, you know, life has a sense of humor. And it became a $100 million blockbuster. They're like, we're like, could we be in the sequel? They said that'll be a $50,000 placement fee, and we're not in the sequel. But anyway, if anybody saw the original Spy Kids film, now that's as fancy as this is going to get. So that took me like half an hour. That is our green salsa. Above it, and life really being strange, above it is an 11.5-ounce little squat jar we did for 7-Eleven one time for like 30 days out of the last 83 years of our history. And it's permanently enshrined in the movie Spy Kids. Don't know what to tell you. And then like 10 years later, I got a call from a set decorator for a show called Pretty Little Liars. I didn't know what it was. My teenage daughter assured me it was a real show. And I saw the address at Warner Brothers. And I said, you know, the only thing I watched at the time was Big Bang Theory. And they actually said, well, that set decorator is a friend of ours. Send me extra. I'll give it to him. And nobody, in all this stuff, and some of you know this, nobody tells you anything. You find out, I was sitting 8 months later, never heard a word, sitting on my couch with my wife and daughter, and I see this in Big Bang Theory. This is tequila salsa that I envision the product. It's my recipe, my favorite show. Had you killed me that day, I would have been okay with it. It's like, that was fun. That was a fun life. I'm done. It was there for 3 episodes, and then it moved to the island for 2. This show's in syndication. My grandchildren will be telling this story long after I'm gone. That was fun. And again, I get people on Facebook that are like, oh my God, you have such a fun life. I'm like, I'm not posting me doing my taxes or ordering salt or praying that this retailer doesn't kill me. You know, it's only the fun stuff you're seeing. But let's see, the finance weenie. To the point, people are like, my wife especially loves it when they're like, so you must do all the cooking at home. And after she gets up off the floor laughing hysterically, I'm like, yeah, I'm really, really brilliant in a tiny acidified condiment aspect of life. Everything else, I can do creme brulee. Everything else, I'm a moron. So how do you get good at making salsa? Because we create things for a lot of people. People come to us at a big level and are like, hey, we want like a pineapple, what do you think we should do? And we're like, well, what about pineapple chipotle serrano? They're like, yeah, do that. And then we go make up the formula. And they can give us, if they're going to buy it all, like, how about more garlic? Hold my beer. And we, you know. But the way you do it, I tell people, a trial and error, frankly, the way you make a great sauce is first you make a bunch of horrible sauce, and then some bad sauce, and some mediocre sauce, and you just keep trying. When I first came back, our biggest customer wanted a bean dip. My dad and my uncle had 50 years experience not making bean dip. So I literally got a recipe from a bean dip salsa spice salesman, and free recipes are usually worth what you pay for them. So I made our first bean dip in a test kitchen. The next day, my dad's like, hey, look at the ceiling. The lid was up there because it blew up overnight. And that's how I found out the pH of bean dip is different than salsa and relish. 30 iterations later, we proceeded to make hundreds of thousands of bean dip every year for decades. And it was delicious and didn't blow the lid off. But you can't be afraid. And there's some company cultures and family cultures where people are afraid to get beyond the road, even a millimeter, because they're going to get shamed and made fun of for the next 20. Remember the time they did that? And that will kill the creativity, kill any vision whatsoever. So I've been a big fan of doing stuff I don't have permission to do. And it's funny, I tell people back in the day, my dad's role was to keep my uncle from firing me. Because I would venture out and I make some mistakes. And if you don't make mistakes, you're not going to have the winners. When we came out with Ghost Pepper Salsa, my uncle, honest to God, thought we were going to get sued and go out of business. So we put a skull on it and crossbones. We put Scary Hot, and we submitted it, again, about prejudging. I didn't want to do this contest. It only cost $100, but we never win the contest with the gourmet foo-foo people because we're in Walmart. They're like, look down their nose at us. Well, our PR firm at the time said, do it, please, for the love of God. And okay, fine. Paid the $100, and I was right. We weren't finalists in the contest. Guess what? I didn't know. One of the judges was in charge of picking the item that would be on the Good Morning, Good Morning America, because I got a Today Show slot later. Good Morning America, 1 minute, for 1 minute, Good Morning America, they're holding up Miss Renfro's Ghost Pepper Salsa, talking about it, tasting it, going, what? And talk about a launch, and I almost lost it for not wanting to waste $100. So again, and again, I will wander off. And if I get to a point where it's like 5 minutes before Q&A, please wave like hell at me because Q&A is my favorite part, and I get clinically depressed if you don't ask questions. So in research, I'm cursed to have to eat at the nicest restaurants in the nation to look at the condiment aspect because it's a tricky job. We've got to think about what could we sell everyday grocery stores 5 years from now. So we're seeing it on a white tablecloth restaurant. I had mango habanero chutney on a halibut. There's a lot of H words. And I was like, middle note, that's delicious. It's a sweet heat. And there's no way on earth we can do it right now because it's better to be late than early. If you're too early and something doesn't sell, the retailer in the back of their mind for the next 20 years, like, yeah, we tried that and it didn't work and I got in trouble. So I waited 5 years. We came out with mango habanero, Ms. Renfro's. I was still told internally like it sounded weird. It's a bad idea. It's our number one item nationwide now. But that you got to be willing to fight. And by the way, sometimes I fight for stuff, and I'm the first one when I fight hard and push back. And once you convince me I'm wrong, I'm the first one to go, yeah, that was stupid. You've got, again, don't have an ego. Be a massive narcissist to push for your vision. But as soon as you find out you have a bad retina, back off. So, and we make things for a lot of people, which I can't put on Facebook and different things. But if you and I took a trip to Walmart together, I would be like, yeah, there's some Renfro, but also we make this brand, this brand, this brand. Because if you have a recipe and an idea and a vision, but you don't have a factory, you probably can't afford a factory. And if you have a factory, you need to run everything you can through it because the payments don't go away. The machine doesn't care if we ran anything or not. The filler's $300,000. We have 500-gallon kettles that are about $200,000 each. You have a boiler. You have all this stuff, and you got workers' comp and all the things. So it gets very so. Our host location here, you may be familiar with their salsa in a jar. I would highly recommend you buy that too sometimes. Delightful little family makes that stuff. And so another, I forgot to tell you so what I was going to say on the economic reformulation or cooking with Microsoft Excel. A chef will bring me their recipe, and I will get up off the ground laughing, like, yeah, we won't be fire roasting the garlic and dipping it in honey, and but I can buy individually quick frozen pieces of spray dried honey with garlic. There are things you can do commercially that aren't going to be on the cooking shows on television, but allow us because it doesn't do any good for anyone if I make it exactly how you make it, and it's $89 at Central Market. Nobody's going to buy it. We're all unhappy. So my job is often to say, we're going to make it in a way that we can make. We have to get 500 gallons of product in that kettle and out in like 41 minutes. So a way that we can do that without my cousin threatening to kill me because they had to open 17,000 little jars. And if you're still proud to have your name on it, realizing it's a grocery version. We did a local celebrity chef's product for Sur La Table one year, several 100,000 jars of stuff. And half the recipes are like, yeah, that's not going to fly. And half of them, he's like, yeah, that's acceptable for the masses, sharing my vision. I mean, not paying $89 a jar, which it's just the way it is. So, see fat thumb, I'm gradually getting past it. But you've got to be willing to step out, and I don't tweet anymore, or X, or whatever we call it, but there was a time when every day I tweeted once a day, knowing 99.999% nothing's gonna happen. But sure enough, one day I woke up, I slept through it. Somebody screenshot me, the Today Show was looking for a particular joke about something that happened. I had made a particular joke about that thing and went to bed. And I wake up and, oh wait, we'll get to that in a moment. We'll be back to that, because that's Balcom. So I made a joke, United landed in the wrong place, and I made a joke about it, and they thought it was quite funny, found it. Important thing, look, I don't put my little bald head up there, I put a jar of our product. And you can't see it that well, but on television, it was a jar of our ghost pepper salsa and Renfro. So again, who cares what any of us look like, it's the product. And we got free, that was probably 50,000 at the time, that was before we all had 8,000 channels and don't actually watch much television. But going back to pithy sayings, and this is one I would use if you're in a family business especially, change is not an indictment of the past. Because when I would say to my uncle, it's time to change our label, what he would hear is, so you're saying I'm an idiot. Like, no, I'm saying this is actually the fancier label from when I got back. After 2 years, I got him to do that. It was all block letters on a white background. And when we did co-pack for another brand, we would literally just change out the name. Instead of Mrs. Renfro's, it would be like Stuckey's. And any child could go like, oh, Renfro's made that. But again, remember, we had no money. My poor dad and uncle, they drove the truck themselves to Memphis at 3 in the morning, and they got chewed out by people because we were always the smallest vendor. If we went to pick up something, we were treated badly because they were probably in a pickup truck or something, and there's 18-wheelers out there. But I was like, that was a great label in 1958 when you came up with it. Unfortunately, it's 1992 now, and it looks like what was called generic packaging, which didn't exist. So we did what I don't recommend, but when you have no money, we did a violent repackaging. We did a custom jar, custom lid, brand new label, all at once. And we went to trade shows and like, for the love of God, I hope they know it's still Renfro's. And it's funny, my late uncle, white hair, very distinguished, and a retailer came up to him and said, oh, thank God you changed your label. And my uncle said, you've always told me never to change it. And he said, well, I didn't want to hurt your feelings. And this is how you learn, it's particularly if your name's on something, get somebody to ask opinions whose name is not on the product. Because I'm not going to get the straight story sometimes. Now, trust me, a lot of retailers could give about me being family. It's funny, you'll think when you first come back to the business, you're like, oh, I'm going into a meeting that are going to think it's cool that's my grandmother on the label. And they're like, anyway, can you or can you not spend $10,000 on this program? Having said that, maybe it's getting old now, but I've done some Zooms recently with like national brands. They're like, oh my God, an actual Renfro's on, this is cool. And then they're like, can you or can you not spend $100,000? But, and then we did, this is commentary. Look how similar those are to you and me. But our sales director, who at the time was our graphics artist also, because again, we had no money, he did what I call the Jerry Garcia chromatic tie-dyed shift, where he like made the colors. And people were like, oh my God, the new label's phenomenal. I'm like, really? That's a new label. Okay. And sales went up like 12%. Well, then about, 15 years went by and we got tired and lazy. And so Balcom had been sending me pecans every Christmas for 10 years. And very nice and very creative, but they represent big companies. We can't afford them. But finally, I'm like, okay, we need to take it to the next level. And Ashley, wave your hand. They own Balcom. Wave your hand too. Carol's going to be here checking you out. They convinced us to make another violent change, but we did it. I mean, when I interviewed people, what does Ms. Renfro's mean to you? We did a proper study, really in depth, and we ended up with what you see now, which I've been so happy with. It's year 6 now, I think. And we've got the Canadian version, so there's French, we have the UK, they have a U in color and flavor. The brand, every piece of collateral we have, my phone cover, a business card. It was amazing to me how many things they could sell us with our new stuff on. But note paper, thank you notes, coffee cups, hats. And I will tell you, people love it. There's a guy that he was accidentally in a cult film. He's a dentist, but he was accidentally in a cult film that had a documentary made about how bad it was, and now people around the world meet and watch it. He posted for his 70th birthday last week, and the whole post was about his birthday and the sign in his yard, and I zoomed in, I'm sure he's wearing his Renfro hat, which I gave him like 3 years ago. It's crazy, the power of a brand, but when there's a family back there. We do have grandmother on the side. If you look at her and like put a wig, like tuna Christmas wig on me, and that's the same person. Another thing, you know, I went to, we did the Today Show already. I was at a trade show and I realized there was a big mosh pit of young people and then me and like 10 other food and beverage CEOs up at the scary area, like watching, and I realized there's a giant screen, 20 by 60 feet, and if you requested a song with the right hashtag, they would put your tweet up there. Well, nobody's doing that. My friends looked at me and they're like, we lost you. Yeah, I'll be back. Again, hold my gluten-free beer. In like 10 minutes, I doodle around, and I didn't actually want to hear Eye of the Tiger. I just wanted our jar on this screen. That screen is 20 by 60, and that jar of ghost pepper was just enormous. And those kids are probably semi-stoned, so it's envisioning, you know, it's hitting their brains, and they probably to this day don't know why they want the ghost pepper salsa, but they do. Again, it doesn't cost me anything. I'm on salary. Every extra minute, it doesn't matter. So use whatever you have. We do have grandma on the label. And people trot up to the booth and they're like, hey, where's Miss Renfro? And I'll say, well, she was my grandmother. She passed away in 1991. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, she would have taken the pity sale every time. It's a very tough woman. You know, she would be appreciative of that. And, you know, I'm not saying you can be a moron in business, but these 3 words I think are way more important than intelligence. Just because, again, you're going to get kicked around, told you're stupid, and bad things happen. There's, you know, one Bluebell, like, oops, you know, we killed, oops, that was bad. Dickie's barbecue and the iced tea. These are the things I wake up in a cold sweat about because you're in food. People eat it. Things can happen. But then, of course, tequila to calm us all down again. We had a distributor on the East Coast who 7 years in a row told us, twice a year for 7 years, we would pitch them and they would tell us, we're never going to buy your brand, like dismissively, like laughing, snorting kind of way. It's a large customer. I know where the 2 people work that told me that. I got one of their resumes one time in the mail. I had the best little ceremony in our shredder room. Little candle. I didn't tell them because that would have been rude. I won't be rude. But boy, I enjoyed it. And then even internally, when I was put in charge of R&D, we weren't making enough money and my kids were hungry. So I took the medium salsa. One day while nobody was looking, I threw black beans in it. So we're going to do black bean salsa and threw some habanero, which then was crazy, sexy, exotic. Nobody knew what that was. And I was told internally it'll be cute to have an extra hot, but we'll clearly never sell much because it's too hot. And it was our #1 item for like 15 years, which now it's mango habanero just went past it. But you have to realize, you know, that tastes change all the time. And if you don't change with it, you're in trouble. And then what we're all shooting for is a super fan who tattoos my grandmother to his arm. Again, nobody tells you. Somebody sent me that tweet. And I'm like, well, it's clearly henna, but that's cute. And I'm like, no, it's real. So if you ever see Quaker City Nighthawks, Sam Anderson, have Sam do the... Yeah, my grandmother's on Sam's arm. So we've had him to the factory. I did a post where my 3 cousins and I have our bare arms, and Sam's got his with it on there. You just never know what could happen. My friend Brian Dalton, who's 4th generation best made pickles, there's like 100 people that have tattooed the smiley thing to them, so I'll tell him it's 99 to 1. Not winning. And then the last thing before some final comment and Q&A, you might wonder why I'm going to show you a magazine that you all get at home, I'm sure, Prepared Food magazine, from like 15 years ago. But I want to teach you a scam, but it helps if you live in New York. If you call somebody like us and you're like, I need you to overnight a jar for a photo shoot, we have to do it. We know it's probably a scam, but we can't risk it. Might be real. So I got one of those. Like, fine, we'll overnight a jar of peach salsa to this address in New York. And I never hear another word. Fine. This shows up in my mailbox. They put us on the cover comparing us with Coca-Cola as examples of Coca-Cola Lime, as examples of creativity. And I swear to you, the first 2 years we had peach salsa, we said we should have called it peach salsa with a question mark after it, because every sales pitch was peach salsa. And then they usually go, gross, weird. And now you don't think anything about it. I mean, we make a peach, I get them mixed up because we do a lot of them. I think we do a peach mango habanero private label for a Canadian place. I mean, we have all these iterations. I was telling Sonia, we do a pineapple salsa for a $50 billion German company that came to the US 7 years ago. I mean, we do all these things behind the scenes that, again, won't be on Facebook unless Jerry posts it. But I didn't say their name out loud. So it just an example, don't be afraid. When I was doing this, a lot of this stuff, you know, a lot of negativity, a lot of pushback. You're just literally making it up. And most of it will fail. Remember that. My pomegranate chipotle, I thought was a great idea. Me and like 4 other people. I mean, we'd sell like 20,000 jars, but it's like, okay, that didn't work. So final thoughts. People will come up to me and they're like, what's your biggest problem? I'm like, owls. If I can get them to taste it, we got them for life. But it's very expensive. And they'll be like, why don't you demo in every store in the country? I said, because I'm allergic to Chapter 11 bankruptcy proceedings. Central Market does a fabulous demo. Pretty much not many other people. And the other ones are like, it's not a big national chain. It'll be $200 a day to get a semi-comatose person standing there. And they'll forget to tell the distributor there is a demo. So you'll get a demo report that's like, people loved it. I could have sold more if we had more than 3 jars on the shelf. Oh, that was a great use of $200. And then social media, thank God, is the leveling of the playing field for us little people. So I post, as I say, more often than a 14-year-old girl because it's free and people want to know that there's somebody back there. They love, I'll be at a restaurant and people stop me and they're telling me, I love that trip you were on, this and that. And sometimes I'll finally just have to go, remind me how we know each other. Oh, I never met you. I just watch you on Facebook. It's like, duly noted. That's why I have a gate code. And I'm just as bad. If you've ever had Christopher Elbow chocolates, I go to a trade show that's 2,000 booths of specialty food. So all my heroes are there. I see Christopher Elbow himself standing in front of my booth, and I'm like, you're Christopher. And he just gave me a deer in the headlights and looking right off. But please share. I captured Doug Renfro on Facebook and Instagram a long time ago. Mrs. Renfro's is Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, X, although I'm not sure what to do with that. Do we have some other apps? Probably. Okay. And I will say, again, unsolicited comment, I believe with lawyers, attorneys, and ad agency, use the best. And you're going to pay a lot, and you're going to be absolutely thrilled. Don't save money on those places. You'll be very sorry. Unless you just have to do it yourself, which certainly you saw how impressive that was. So again, if you'll make up Q's, I'll make up A's. I appreciate you not throwing anything at me until this point and only laughing at the funny parts. And please, again, I will get sad if you don't ask a question. Thank you.